Hi, so welcome to our first adventure in prayer. Um, it seems a corny title, but I've called it that because prayer can be an adventure. It's often seen as something really stuffy, but it is an adventure. So this first session is basically Prayer 101. What do we want to know about prayer? And there are some really common questions asked. And the first being, what even is prayer? The simple answer to that question is that it's a conversation. It's a conversation between you and God. And so it's a conversation between you and a really close friend, a member of your family, someone that you can tell absolutely anything to. And so it shouldn't be forced. It should be a comfortable thing, and it should be flowing and easy. But I know that for so many people it doesn't always feel that way. So apologies for the dog who's joining us. I do have the privilege of being able to sit in the most beautiful vicarage garden, I'm sure, in London to be able to do this. So I'm taking full advantage of that. So yeah, prayer is a conversation, and it should be joyful. So how do we make it like that when prayer is often seen as a chore and something that just has to be done? Well, that sounds like a really straightforward question, but it's not that easy to answer. Prayer's a habit to be cultivated, and it's something that does get easier with practice, and it gets easier when you found what works for you. There are so many different types of prayer, and over the next 10 days we're going to be looking at lots of different types. So we'll be looking at the Lord's Prayer tomorrow as an example of a set prayer that we learn by rote and say, to see how we can get into those sorts of prayers. We'll be looking at Ignatian spirituality in two parts. So imaginative prayer, prayer that doesn't even sometimes feel like it would fit into the definition of prayer. We'll be looking at things like Anglican prayer beads, so using physical methods of praying, and about using our posture to help us to pray. We'll also look at creative prayers, which so often seem to be consigned to the Sunday school room and the children's corner, but actually can be a really good way into a deep and meaningful encounter with God. And we'll be looking at the daily office, which are the prayers set out every day by the Church of England. The Church of England follows in common worship a set of prayers that are said by churches and by Christians at home all over the world. We'll be looking at what happens when we pray for healing, what that means, and how we go about that and how we reconcile that in various ways, and it seems a very difficult subject sometimes. We'll also be looking at how we pray in church on a Sunday morning, in church intercessions, which can seem very different from our usual day-by-day prayer and conversation with God. And then on the day of Pentecost, we'll be looking at what happens when we can't pray, acknowledging that prayer is sometimes a very difficult thing indeed, that our lives may not be in the right place or point for praying, and working out how we encounter those times in our lives and work through them. So you can see that over the next 10 days we've got quite a rich and varied programme, and I hope you'll be able to pop in for at least some of them. It would be lovely if you could watch all of them and try out different things, even things that you never thought that you would do before. You might find something that works for you in a surprising way. So there will be something going onto Facebook at 5 o'clock every evening. That may be live, or it might be something that I've pre-recorded for you. but it will be something that I have thought about the best way to introduce these ideas of prayer to you. So please do look at that. And although it's actually going out at 5 o'clock in the evening every day, those things will stay online, so you can dip into them whenever works for you. So, acknowledging that there are so many different types of prayer, and that we're going to be having a look at different types in the next few days and finding out what works for us. One question that is often asked is there a best way to pray? That there are all these different types, but is there a way that God is asking us to pray? The simple answer to that is no, there isn't. God is asking us to pray how we can, and whatever works best for us. Think of prayer as a vehicle. It can be a car, a boat, an aeroplane, a train. It's a vehicle to get you to be in the presence of your best friend. Your best friend doesn't care which type of transport you take. All your friend cares about is that you get there, and that you get there safely, and that when you're there you enjoy the time that you have with them. So no, there isn't a best way of praying. Whatever people might tell you, if somebody says that somebody is really good at prayer, it just means that the way that they found to pray works for them, not that the way that they are praying is the best way of praying. It's often thought that you need to be quite formal in prayer, that God only understands Latin, or that God only understands long words. That's simply not true. You know that in your heart of hearts, I know. But sometimes when you pray, I know that you start thinking in really flowery language, and sometimes you just can't keep up with yourself on that. It doesn't matter. It's about being you. It's about being authentic. Again, if formal words, formal prayer works for you, then great, do it. But if it doesn't, don't. It's not going to help you. It's not going to help your relationship with God. Just do what feels right. And that goes for the sort of language that you use. It goes for the sort of posture that you sit in. It goes for the environment that you pray in. If it works for you, it's right. So you might find that you are praying in the bath, and that most of your prayer at that particular time is expletives. That's fine. Trust me, it's fine. I've been there. It really doesn't matter. You can pray anywhere, and you can use any words. Now, I said that posture doesn't matter. Well, actually it does. Again, in the way that I've been banging on about for the past 5 minutes or so, in as much as it matters to you. If you feel that you connect more deeply when you're on your knees, if you feel that you have to prostrate yourself, then posture matters. It matters that you're comfortable. Again, think about if you were talking to a really close friend, a member of your family. You need to feel comfortable physically, as well as emotionally and mentally. So posture matters in that sense. It matters to you. It doesn't matter to God. And again, with the putting your hands together, closing your eyes, if that helps you to get into a frame of mind where you're comfortable with God, then do it. God doesn't expect it, but if it helps you to focus and to get into that space, then it matters. Anyone can pray. You don't have to be trained in prayer. You've been doing it all your life. You've been doing it when you haven't even realised that you're doing it. You've been doing it when you've just sighed at the hopelessness of something. You've been doing it when you've said, oh, for God's sake. You can pray. What tells you that you can't, and what stops you from believing that you pray well, is your competitive spirit. That you hear other people praying and they seem so more eloquent than your prayers. And that's just not the case. Your prayers are perfect. They are valuable, they are precious to God, and they are what help you to grow in relationship with Him. Prayers aren't a magic spell. They are literally just how we connect, putting ourselves before God, telling Him all of our concerns, telling Him the concerns of the world, recognizing the concerns of the world as we sit in God's presence. And that's why prayer is powerful, because when we recognize what the world needs and what we need and bring them to God, we connect with the heart of God and we connect with God's power through us. A very wise friend of mine once told me that she knew that prayer worked because the more she prayed for a particular situation, she realised that what she was praying for was changing. Subtly over time, what she was asking for from God was changing, even though it was the same situation that she was praying for. And she realised that that was God acting in her through the prayers, that she saw ways to change things, that she saw ways to act as God in the world. Prayer is how we become part of God's mission, of how we become Christ's hands and feet and heart in this world. We pray for those who can't pray for themselves. We pray for ourselves. And you know what? It doesn't matter if sometimes our prayers seem inappropriate, because God will work through us even through that. There are no limits to God's power, especially when we work with Him. That's all that He asks. All that He needs from us is to be at one with Him. And so now that we know a little more about what we're trying to achieve through prayer, please do join us tomorrow when we talk about the Lord's Prayer, that prayer that we learn by rote in schools, that we say in every church service, and that we often say without even thinking it through. Let's think a little bit more about that tomorrow and the power of that particular prayer. In the meantime, I'll be praying for each and every one of you, and I ask that you pray for me too. God bless.